The radar screen explodes with contacts. 4 hostile signatures materializing from the pre-dawn darkness like phantoms suddenly made real. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen's coffee mug slips from her hand, shattering across the steel deck of the USS Roosevelt's bridge, but nobody notices. Every eye is locked on the glowing display where Russian warships, massive, armed, and moving with terrifying precision, are bearing down on their position at combat speed. "Jesus Christ," whispers the radar operator, his voice cracking. "They're not slowing down." 6:18 a.m. on November 3rd, 2025, 20 miles off the Venezuelan coast. The Caribbean Sea that seemed so peaceful 60 seconds ago now feels like a trap springing shut. Commander Michael Torres bursts onto the bridge, still fastening his uniform, and freezes when he sees the formation pattern. This isn't a routine transit. This isn't a training exercise. This is something the U.S. Navy hasn't faced in decades, a direct challenge from a peer adversary in waters America has controlled since before anyone aboard was born. Through the morning haze, dark shapes rise from the horizon. Russian frigates flying to St. Andrew's Cross, their hulls cutting through the waves like knives through silk. The radio crackles with a message in accented English that makes Chen's blood run cold. "Roosevelt, we advise you do not interfere." Torres's hand hovers over the collision alarm, his mind racing through scenarios that all end badly. Hold position and risk being surrounded, retreat and show weakness that will echo through every naval command worldwide, or stand firm and bet everything that cooler heads will prevail when two nuclear powers face each other across less distance than a commercial airline flies in 90 seconds. The helmsman looks back, waiting for orders that will either defuse the most dangerous naval standoff in a generation or trigger it. In the Combat Information Center below, a young ensign realizes his hands are shaking. This morning he woke up expecting another routine patrol. Now he's watching the post-Cold War order collapse in real time on a 12-inch radar display. "Commander," the weapons officer says quietly, his voice steady despite the chaos. "They're inside 12 miles and still closing. We need a decision. Now!" The tension thickens like fog rolling across the deck. Torres knows that every second of hesitation is being recorded, analyzed, and weaponized by intelligence agencies on 3 continents. His next words will define not just this moment, but potentially the future of American naval operations in the Western Hemisphere. He takes one breath, then another, forcing his mind to cut through the adrenaline and fear that threatens to cloud judgment. Outside the reinforced windows, the sun breaks the horizon, painting the approaching Russian vessels in gold and shadow, making them look simultaneously beautiful and menacing. The Caribbean has witnessed countless naval operations over centuries, Spanish galleons, British frigates, American carriers, but nothing quite like this standoff where modern warships armed with hypersonic missiles face each other in waters so shallow that maneuver room becomes a precious commodity measured in yards rather than miles. Inside the Combat Information Center, the atmosphere transforms from routine monitoring to heightened alertness within seconds. The radar operator identifies the signature with chilling precision. 2 Russian frigates, Admiral Gorshkov-class vessels capable of carrying Kaliber cruise missiles with ranges exceeding 1,500 miles. These aren't patrol boats. They're projection of power platforms, designed specifically to operate far from Russian shores and demonstrate Moscow's global reach. The watch officer's voice cuts through the tension. "Confirmed track and classification." The response comes quickly, professionally, but everyone hears the slight edge underneath the technical language. "Contact confirmed. 2 Russian Navy combatants bearing 270, range 25 miles and closing." A third contact appears moments later, smaller but moving with identical precision, suggesting coordinated operations planned weeks or months in advance. Commander Michael Torres arrives on the bridge within 90 seconds of the initial contact report. His 30 years of naval service have prepared him for countless scenarios, but this one carries unique implications. The waters off Venezuela's northern coast exist in a gray zone of international law and political posturing. Technically international, these sea lanes have been dominated by American naval forces since World War II.
Russian warships operating here aren't violating any maritime regulations, but they're challenging something deeper, the assumption of uncontested American presence in the Western Hemisphere. Torres knows his response in the next few hours could either diffuse tension or accelerate it into something the Pentagon will spend years analyzing. He's also acutely aware that communication satellites overhead are transmitting encrypted data streams to Washington, Moscow, and Caracas simultaneously, creating a real-time audience of generals, admirals, and politicians whose decisions will be shaped by what happens in the next crucial minutes.
The communication officer activates the international hailing frequency, speaking with measured professionalism. Unidentified vessels bearing 270. This is United States Patrol Vessel Roosevelt operating in international waters under freedom of navigation protocols. Please identify and state your intentions. Static fills the bridge for several heartbeats that feel like hours. Every crew member understands that the tone and content of the Russian response will set the parameters for everything that follows. Then, a calm, Russian-accented voice responds with equal formality. Roosevelt, this is Russian Federation Navy frigate Gremyashchi. We acknowledge your presence. Our transit through these waters is lawful under international maritime law. We advise you maintain safe distance and do not interfere with our operations. The phrasing is deliberate, almost diplomatic, but the underlying message resonates with unmistakable steel. We have as much right to be here as you do, and we will not be intimidated. The response is textbook correct and deliberately provocative. By 0624, a second contact appears on radar, larger and moving in tight formation with the first two vessels. The Roosevelt sonar operator reports additional underwater signatures, suggesting possible submarine activity in the vicinity, which elevates the threat assessment exponentially. Submarines change everything in naval confrontations, introducing hidden variables that can shift tactical balance in seconds. Torres makes a crucial decision: engage diplomatically while preparing tactically. He orders full sensor surveillance, begins recording all communications, and transmits an encrypted situation report to 4th Fleet Headquarters in Norfolk, Virginia. The message is concise but loaded. Multiple Russian Navy combatants confirmed operating in proximity to Venezuelan territorial waters. Formation appears intentional. Possible subsurface contacts. Request guidance on rules of engagement, parameters, and authorization for defensive posturing. The response from Norfolk arrives within 12 minutes, a testament to how seriously Atlantic Command takes this development. Observe and report, maintain international law compliance, do not initiate hostile action. Shadow if tactically feasible, authorization granted for defensive systems readiness, but weapons hold unless directly threatened. These orders sound simple, but require extraordinary discipline. Torres must keep his crew calm while positioning the Roosevelt close enough to monitor Russian intentions without triggering an incident that could escalate into the first direct naval confrontation between American and Russian forces since the Cold War era. The orders also carry an implicit message. Washington wants intelligence on Russian capabilities and intentions, even if that means accepting some tactical risk. The Roosevelt has become both observer and bait in a game where miscalculation could have catastrophic consequences. By 0645, the gap between vessels shrinks to 12 nautical miles. The Russian formation demonstrates impressive coordination, with frigates maintaining perfect spacing while a helicopter lifts from one deck, circles twice at 2 miles distance, then returns. Its reconnaissance, intimidation, and demonstration of capability rolled into one calculated maneuver. The helicopter's sensor pod is clearly visible, recording high-definition video and electronic signatures that Russian intelligence will analyze for months. Torres orders his crew to stations, not battle stations, but heightened alert status that keeps weapon systems ready without openly threatening. Every sailor understands the delicate balance, appears strong enough to discourage aggression, but controlled enough to avoid triggering Russian defensive responses. The ship's phalanx close-in weapon system tracks the helicopter automatically, a fact the Russians certainly detect through their electronic warfare sensors, creating a tense mutual awareness that both sides possess lethal capabilities held in check only by professional restraint and political calculation. The tactical situation grows more complex when Venezuelan coastal radar begins actively pinging both fleets. Caracas is clearly coordinating with Moscow,
providing real-time intelligence on American positions while demonstrating that Venezuela considers Russian presence not just acceptable but welcomed. This triangular dynamic, American, Russian, and Venezuelan forces all operating in overlapping areas, creates unprecedented complexity. Torres watches his radar display transform into a mosaic of contacts: Russian warships, Venezuelan patrol craft, commercial shipping trying to navigate through the tension, and his solitary patrol vessel attempting to monitor everything simultaneously. The situation mirrors Cold War confrontations, but with modern technology that makes every move visible to global audiences within minutes. Social media accounts in Caracas are already posting blurry photos of ships on the horizon, generating speculation and misinformation that complicates the tactical picture with information warfare dimensions. At 0730, an unexpected development shifts the entire dynamic. A small, fast-moving contact appears on the Roosevelt's starboard side, approaching at high speed without broadcasting identification signals. The radar operator's voice rises slightly. Unidentified contact bearing 085, range 5 miles and closing rapidly. No transponder, no AIS signal, no response to automated identification queries. Torres feels his pulse quicken. In these crowded waters, an unidentified vessel could be anything: smugglers, intelligence operatives, or something designed to provoke an American response that Russia could exploit diplomatically. The timing feels too coincidental, suggesting coordination between Russian and Venezuelan forces to create maximum pressure on the American commander. It's psychological warfare executed through maritime maneuvering, forcing Torres to divide his attention between multiple potential threats while maintaining composure under observation.
The Roosevelt adjusts course 5 degrees to widen separation, standard procedure for avoiding potential collision. But the unknown craft mirrors the maneuver, maintaining relative position with precision that suggests experienced operators rather than confused civilians. "It's shadowing us," the navigation officer reports, tension evident in her clipped speech. Torres faces a decision that could define his career: treat this as hostile and take defensive action, or maintain composure and wait for the situation to clarify. He chooses patience, ordering heightened observation but no weapons activation. Through binoculars, lookouts identify the craft as a small speedboat with minimal superstructure, possibly Venezuelan special forces conducting reconnaissance or testing American reaction times. The boat's crew members are visible now, some holding what appear to be cameras or communication devices, creating ambiguity about whether this is military intelligence gathering or deliberate provocation designed to test American rules of engagement. After 5 agonizing minutes, the unknown vessel slows, drifts laterally, then alters course away from the Roosevelt. Contact is opening distance, the lookout confirms, relief audible in his voice. Torres doesn't relax. He knows this was a probe, testing how quickly American forces react to ambiguous threats in proximity to Russian warships. The coordination feels too precise to be coincidental. Moscow and Caracas are working together, creating complex tactical scenarios that force the United States to reveal operational procedures and decision-making timelines. Every response is being recorded, analyzed, and integrated into threat assessment models that will inform future operations. The incident also serves another purpose, demonstrating to regional observers that Venezuela can operate freely in its coastal waters, even with American warships present, undermining U.S. influence through visible defiance of traditional power dynamics. By 0755, the Russian frigates close to 5 nautical miles, near enough that deck crews on both sides can observe each other with naked eyes. Sailors aboard the Gremyashi point cameras toward the Roosevelt, documenting American positions, equipment configurations, and response protocols. Torres orders his crew to do likewise, creating a bizarre mutual observation where both sides record each other for future analysis. The professional courtesy remains intact. No weapons are aimed, no targeting radars activate, but the message is unmistakable. Russia is demonstrating that American Caribbean dominance is no longer absolute. Through the bridge windows, Torres can actually see individual Russian sailors moving across their deck, some waving casually as if this were a friendly encounter rather than a geopolitical confrontation. The surreal normalcy of the gesture only heightens the underlying tension, reminding everyone that warfare in the 21st century
often looks nothing like historical precedents. The most tense moment arrives when the lead Russian frigate angles slightly toward the Roosevelt, closing distance to 3 nautical miles before steadying on a parallel course. For 60 seconds, Torres faces the possibility that Moscow intends a collision scenario, forcing the American vessel to either yield or risk physical contact that would generate international headlines. His helmsman grips the wheel, waiting for orders that would fundamentally alter the encounter's nature. The entire bridge holds its breath collectively, understanding that naval collisions between great powers have historically preceded broader conflicts. Torres makes the call that defines the entire confrontation. Maintain heading. Do not deviate. His voice carries absolute certainty, projecting confidence even as his mind races through contingency plans. It's a test of nerve that works. The Russian vessel steadies, then gradually opens distance, acknowledging the American refusal to yield without forcing escalation. The moment passes, but its significance reverberates through every crew member who witnessed two nations edge toward the brink and step back through mutual recognition that some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed.
By 0810, the Russian formation begins turning westward, increasing separation as systematically as they approached. Radar contacts fade from 12 miles to 15, then 20. The tension that compressed the bridge for nearly 2 hours releases gradually, leaving crew members drained but professionally satisfied. Torres logs the encounter with deliberately neutral language. Routine observation of Russian Federation Navy transit through international waters. No hostile action observed. Standard protocols maintained throughout. Everyone aboard knows the official language masks a profound truth. They've just witnessed and participated in a fundamental shift in Caribbean power dynamics. The Roosevelt's communication officer transmits the all-clear signal to Norfolk, and within minutes, the encrypted reply confirms what everyone suspected. Well done, Roosevelt. Comprehensive debrief required upon return to port. National-level interest in all sensor data and crew observations. The aftermath reveals layers of significance that extend far beyond the Roosevelt's deck. In Washington, Pentagon analysts dissect every second of the encounter, recognizing that Russian confidence in operating near Venezuelan waters signals broader strategic realignment. Moscow is demonstrating that if NATO can expand eastward toward Russian borders, Russia can project power westward into regions America has dominated since the 19th century. The symmetry is intentional, designed to force Western policymakers to confront the logical consequences of their own actions. For Venezuela, hosting Russian naval presence provides crucial political leverage, showing that international sanctions cannot isolate a nation with powerful friends willing to demonstrate support through visible military presence. President Maduro will undoubtedly use footage of Russian warships operating freely near Venezuelan waters as domestic propaganda, reinforcing narratives of resistance against American imperialism. For the Roosevelt's crew, the experience becomes a formative lesson in 21st century naval operations. Modern confrontations don't necessarily involve weapons fire or dramatic maneuvers. They occur through presence, patience, and the psychological weight of refusing to blink first. Torres gathers his bridge team after the Russian vessels disappear beyond the horizon. What we did today matters more than you might realize. We held our ground without escalating. That's how professional navies operate in ambiguous situations. Remember this day because it won't be the last time great powers test each other in waters everyone claims but nobody owns. His words carry weight born from experience and the sobering recognition that the relatively peaceful post-Cold War era is giving way to something more competitive, more dangerous, and less predictable. The encounter generates minimal mainstream media coverage, relegated to brief mentions in military affairs publications, but within naval communities worldwide, the Roosevelt incident becomes case study material taught at staff colleges and wargaming centers. It represents a new era where dominance is contested not through battles, but through sustained presence, where victory means maintaining composure under pressure rather than destroying opponents. The Caribbean Sea, calm again by afternoon, holds the memory of the morning's tension in its depths, waiting for the next test that everyone knows will eventually come. Sailors aboard the Roosevelt will carry this experience for the rest of their careers, a reminder that in modern naval operations, the most important victories often involve shots never fired and crises diffused through professionalism rather than firepower.
As the Roosevelt steams toward its home port 3 days later, Torres stands on the bridge watching the sunset paint the Caribbean in brilliant oranges and purples. He thinks about the young ensign in the Combat Information Center whose hands shook during those critical minutes, about the helmsman who held course when every instinct screamed to turn away, about the communication officer who maintained professional courtesy even when speaking to potential adversaries. These moments define military service in ways that peacetime routine never can. They reveal character, test training, and ultimately determine whether nations resolve disputes through dialogue or descend into conflicts that consume generations. The Roosevelt's encounter with Russian warships near Venezuela will be analyzed, debated, and referenced for years. But for the crew who lived through it, the lesson remains elegantly simple. Strength without restraint is recklessness, and courage sometimes means holding fire when every nerve demands action.